Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Danielle Anderson, and today I wanted to, especially for some of my acupuncture students, walk you through what an acupuncture session looks like for a cat. So I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about what I'm doing for those who are students and still learning. So this is Gertie. Gertie comes every few weeks. She's about 16 years old, just over 16, and she's had several issues throughout her life. She has had a luxating patella surgery that actually failed. We found out last year, I believe, that her suture that was and her implant that was supposed to be holding everything in place was loose in her knee, and they had to go in and remove that. She also has some back pain. She also has had swollen hocks and carpi and elbows in the past that we have attempted to treat with prednisone, thinking that it was an immune-mediated polyarthritis. She does come frequently, so I have worked my way up as far as needle size with her. I usually put in a GV20 just to kind of calm her down. She does have some pretty tense taut bands in her neck, and her mom says she has had some weird twitching occasionally. So I have worked my way up 0.2s with her, and we do some e-stim, especially over her sacrum. And part of this is because she has some constipation issues. She gets quite obstipated. And so her mom has found that, and maybe that part of that, like we were talking about the other week when I was talking to Dr., is that there's probably a fair amount of pain associated with her arthritis. Her hocks are pretty swollen. And there's a lot of crepitus and laxity in those joints. So we feel she holds it in for a little bit longer than what a cat would normally do. And then it gets dry and intubated and really, really hard to pass. So she most recently has had some sacral pain as well that I've started e-stimming. And she seems to respond to that quite well. As you can see, Gertie's a pretty laid back patient. So right now I'm just putting some cervical spinal points in. She's actually less sore in her neck than she has been previously. She is sitting on a pee pad because Gertie unfortunately does not like car rides, and so sometimes pees and is a little bit wet. So in general, when I treat cats, this is how I tend to treat them. I'm usually on the bed with them or the little couch here. And they usually tend to be fairly tolerant. Most cats I don't find are as treat motivated for acupuncture. They tend to just relax. Actually, I don't know if you guys can see that from the computer, but just even gentle palpation over her sacrum, she's a little sore and twitchy. So we're going to work our way back there. Yeah, she's just a little bit sore. So for a long time when Gertie was first coming in, we focused a lot on her hock and her carpus, and I think we've switched some of her focus to the constipation issues that she's had at 16. So when I first started treating Gertie, I started with dark green serins. So I'm not sure how many people are aware what size that is. And we worked our way up to red, and then we worked our way up to yellows, and now we're at the blues or 0.2s, which tends to be the average size that I use for dogs. I usually take a bit to get there with cats. I know, sweet. Did Gertie's mom say whether she pooped? And again, before I treat, I always run my hands over and take a feel and see where, if there's any issues that I need to target that day. So even if it's a patient that you're seeing frequently, and I've been seeing Gertie for quite a while now, she's now on some Medicam and gabapentin for pain, but her mom does find that these treatments are very helpful. I still make sure that I take a feel of everything, just so you don't get into the habit of using the same needles and the same points and everything every time you see these patients. You want to make sure that you're actually feeling her where, yeah, so she's very sore there. So I'm just around a 5L6, which tends to be where she's been a little bit sensitive lately. I think it's important too with cats to have a very calm environment. So we do tend to try and not book the feline patients at the same time that we might have a dog that's extremely rambunctious. Even though we're in a separate room, they're very sensitive to some of the sounds that are happening on the other side of that door. So I'm palpating over her sacrum right now, and I don't know if you guys can visualize that. Probably not, but she is twitching like crazy. So other than bladder points, make sure you think through, if you're thinking you're kind of helping with your constipation. I know, baby, I know. What other points could you potentially consider using? We definitely use a lot of GB1, and they tolerate it quite well. Hook her up. So I have a Pantheon and an Ito as my e-stim unit. And again, this is one of the reasons I use the 0.2s, because as Dr. Robinson has talked about in all of your online modules, for those who are taking the course, 0.2s are usually the minimum that you want to use when you're using e-stim. I have on occasion used 0.18, but in general, I try and use the 0.2s. If you do go with a smaller gauge, then make sure that you're very, very cautious on how fast you're turning up the e-stim. Now, a couple of different things that I find with my Pantheon versus my e-stim. Again, I usually do dense disperse when I'm treating with the Pantheon, and you can't do that with your e-stim on your Ito. But I do like my Ito as far as my ability to gradually turn things up. I find on the Pantheon, as soon as I turn it on, with cats especially, or very sensitive dogs, I can't go much higher than just barely turning it on. Whereas the Ito, I can more gradually turn things. Good girl. Okay, so always remember to turn your main switch on first, and I have it on mixed. I turn my leads on. And if you are going to turn your levels up and you're on dense dispersed, make sure that when it's on the higher frequency, that's when you turn things up. Because what you don't want to do is turn it up when it's on the lower frequency, and then when it switches, they're going to get a bit of a zap, and you don't want that. In the past, I have done a lot of hawk points and stifle points on her. Since I'm working on constipation issues, I usually keep them in this position, and then it's a little challenging to try and switch her when she's hooked up to the e-stim. So I have been kind of focusing on this. I may put some elbow points on her. When I do that, I do tend to go at a lower gauge needle. So this is a 0.16, which is, but not serins. I have balance needles. They're also coated. They're a little less expensive than the serins, and I do like the feel of them. There is a new needle out called I think it's an AccuFast, and it is a environmentally friendly acupuncture needle. So I believe the product is recyclable. So that was a large intestine 11 that I just put in. Her elbows actually don't feel that bad. There are times that I can palpate her, and she's actually, there's so much effusion, you can palpate it. Grab her little elbows. All right, so I have two different lasers. Both of them are class 3D. What I tend to use on cats is my SpectraBed. So it has both a pulsed frequency and a continuous frequency. And we tend to use the pulsed. So it's a 50% duty cycle. The settings on it are based on time and frequency. So I have it setting at a 50% duty cycle and for 20 seconds. There is a chart that comes with the machine, and it gives you an idea what you want to use for continuous or for pulse frequency based on what you're treating. So whether you're trying to treat infection versus chronic inflammation. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see there, there's a little blue light that shines to let you know that you are treating. So I have it set for about 20 seconds. And if you look for chronic inflammation at 20 seconds at a 50% duty cycle, you are delivering approximately 7.5 joules per diode. There are 4 diodes on my machine, on my head here. I'm going to turn the beeping off because I find that actually quite irritating. If no one has used non-coated needles, I highly recommend that you try it because the uncoated needles have a very different feel than the coated. So when you are looking for your Dur Chi, when you twist them, I don't ever find that I get that with Serins, but I do find that I get it quite nicely with the carbos. I have used Huatos. I don't find that the Huatos are as well tolerated as the carbos, so I tend to stay away from the Huatos. I do have some because on occasion I find that they are just give me a little bit more effect when I'm dealing with those neurologic cases. I know, honey, you're sore. Challenge. Gertie has another challenge. Gertie has a little bit of extra weight that she's carrying. Turn down. And so finding your stifle joint is sometimes a challenge, or any of your joints is finding as a little bit challenging when they're carrying a little bit extra weight. Cats especially, because when they sit, all their little skin folds and everything fall and kind of hide where everything is. So it's a little bit more challenging, but again, your palpation skills come in very, very handy. So I can easily follow her femur and find out where her stifle joint is. I can feel that really, really easily. And, you know, your exam is going to be a little bit different on a cat than it is going to be on a dog, right? So cats have a little bit less patience for overhandling. Again, we have some pretty, really tolerant cats that come in here, but just remember that, you know, putting them on their side, doing range of motion, all of those things are very much less tolerated in a cat than they are in a dog. Good girl, Gert. And again, another challenge, especially when they move, is the needles fall out. Now, I do find that in the carbos or the uncoated needles, they definitely stick in a little better, especially, let's say, in a dog that's up and moving around or gets up and shakes, having that. She's currently hiding her hawk. Actually, she's hiding it under her elbow. Again, palpation skills. So I do find using the carbos, especially if you're going to do e-stim, is a little bit easier, or any uncoated needle, because they have less of a tendency to fall out on you. Good girl. I'm going to unhook her e-stim for a bit so I can try and get that other hawk. Her left hawk tends to be worse than her right. And I know we always get questions about, well, how long do they have to be treated for? You know, there's no rule. They don't have to sit here for 45 minutes with needles in. You know that you get some effect even after a couple minutes. And, you know, there's times where, especially if you're doing a facial point or something like that, being able to put it in, twist, and take it out, you're getting tissue effect there. So I think, you know, don't stress yourself about how long those needles have been in. Again, if you put it in, it immediately falls out, you can replace it. But if it's been in for 5 minutes or so, you know, maybe you don't need to. Maybe just let it go, see how the effect is. Have the owners reassess when they go home and see. And that's the constant thing, right? Is constantly reassessing them and seeing, you know, what you can do differently the next time they come in. You know, a lot of the acupuncturists have mobile units, and I think, especially with Gertie, it will come in handy. Currently, with the pandemic, there's not a lot of mobile options right now. We've had to shut down our mobile unit temporarily, but I think having that as an option for especially cats who don't like to travel, and reducing their stress level is super, super important. So I think anytime you have an option to add that mobile unit, I know it's a little bit more challenging. We have a lot of rules and regulations in Ontario, but if you're thinking about doing acupuncture, having a mobile option is a great idea. I don't know who had the advantage of seeing me do Twist a couple weeks ago, who was a dog that came in for acupuncture. Again, Twist is a dog, a little bit easier to manipulate. They've both been coming for quite some time, so they're pretty chill here. But again, Twist is easier to be able to put her on her side or tell her where to go. Sometimes with cats, I mean, Gertie's pretty good, and I probably could do that. But again, a lot of these cats don't like over manipulation, and so you sometimes just have to work with what they're willing to do. And I would say dogs are the same way. There are some dogs that, when they come in for their acupuncture, we can put them over a foot pause ball and we can be doing both sides, and other ones are way too anxious to tolerate that. What I'm doing right now is counting my needles because I want to know what to go back for and make sure that I have everything, especially with cats. You want to make sure that you're not missing anything because they're amazing groomers. And I want to make sure that they don't eat one. Not bad for 16 years old, kiddo. And that's one thing you will find when you're treating some of these senior patients. They come in and you think you might get give them some extra quality of life for maybe you're thinking a month, maybe you're thinking 2. And, those often end up turning into years of good quality. I know, your needles are out now too. Switch back in the carrier. So I hope that gives you some insight to how we treat cats with their acupuncture. Anybody ever has any questions, please feel free to contact me. Have a great day.